Testing, testing. Hello. this.
Yeah, let's put it anywhere we want.
Right. Okay, there, test it.
Testing, 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 testing. Don't come near me to give feedback. No, no. That's your jacket? All right, all right. They don't care. They're still drifting in. Ooh. I'm alive, so don't talk to them.
If everybody will take their seats, we can get going.
We got maybe 40 people here. It's only 7:01. Anybody on?
In your pocket, there's that receiver. You can take that out and just hit the off button. Yeah, otherwise everybody's hearing. So this button right there, hold it.
This isn't going to ring, so it's okay.
You sure?
Whoever's not here, we bring.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you take your seats, we can get going. Tonight is our first Meadowbrook Pointe budget meeting from this particular board, from this board. This will be a yearly occurrence as we go on. Can you hear me? Oh. Now? Okay, this will be a yearly occurrence as we move forward. We have a budget committee that worked very hard to get this budget together, and that's consisting of Alan Capel and Howie Rosen and Ron Totora, Arnie Scher and Larry Silver, Len Masucci and Ed Rasmussen. They all worked very hard to get this budget together for you. And tonight Alan Capel is going to be speaking and explaining it all. As you see, we have a reserve fund and a reserve fund study, which Alan will be explaining to you tonight. After the meeting, as part of our new system here. We're going to have 2 board members available in the Business Center to listen to your comments or suggestions. We're going to do this once a month from now on. There'll be rotating members of the board who will be in there to listen to you and hear your ideas, complaints, suggestions, etc. So at that point now, I'm going to turn this over to Alan, and he's going to start the explanations.
Hear me? Good evening, everybody. Glad to see all of you here. Wish there were more, but you know, the weather and some other stuff going on. So what I'm going to do tonight is explain to you all about the reserve fund, why we need it, why we didn't have it, why we have it now, and what it's going to cost us to put money away for all the future repairs that have to be done. So the way our system works on the financial side, we have 3 funds. We have an operating fund, a working capital fund, and last but not least, the reserve fund. Operating fund is used for current year budgeting. All of our money that we allocate and all the revenue that we collect goes into the operating fund. The working capital fund was established by the sponsor, and it consists of 2 months of dues that everybody who came in here put into this fund. We do not have the right to touch it unless the operating budget falls short. So far, it hasn't fallen short. We've had surpluses. Hopefully not that it continues, but surpluses will be at a minimum. The working capital fund, the reserve fund, is a fund that is set up to prepare ourselves for the future expenditures that we're going to have. In regard to that, we commissioned an engineering firm, Korscher and Conacher and Torscher, who does this work. And they came in and they did a study. More about that in a little while. I want to speak more to the history of the reserve fund. And I've divided this presentation into 3 parts. One is the history of the reserve fund, BT, and second is the reserve fund, AT, and the third is the budget. Now, anybody know what BT stands for? Before transition. Well, close, before turnover. We haven't gone through transition yet, so you get a gold star, but not 2 gold stars. So the first part of this presentation is going to be about what we didn't have a reserve, why we didn't have a reserve fund, and what it's going to cost us going on to the future. First of all, the co-op law and the condo law are very similar, but different in a couple of respects. One of the big differences is that the co-op law provides that you have to have a reserve fund. The condo law does not. So in the special risks section, want to find that slide? Okay, stop. This is special risk 23. Special risk 23 is soon going to become a watchword of this entity. Basically, it says, if you can read it, I'm going to read it to you. And there are 25 special risks that were put into your offering plan. That's that big white book. And this is the first section of the big white book. And basically, it tells you all the things aren't going to be done that maybe should have been done. Number 23 is this 23rd special risk. And I will read it to you, if you cannot read that. The association budget does not contain a reserve fund to be used for future capital improvements of either the common elements of the condominium or the common areas of the association. The next sentence is a beautiful one. In the view of the fact that this is a new construction project, it is not anticipated that there will be any major capital improvements required during the first 5 years of operation. How'd that turn out? We're now in the 10th year. So what does that mean to us? Go to the next slide. Okay. This slide is something that I worked up basically to show what would have happened if the sponsor had put in a reserve fund from day one. And what I used as my criteria, and this is a very, very low number, I said if we put away $20 a month from the date of inception, and not figuring in investment income because it's de minimis at this rate, where will we be at the date of turnover, which was 12/31/16? Without going into too much detail, what I did was I took all the closed units at the beginning of the year, I took half the units that we closed during the year to come up with a general average of what we had. I multiplied that by $20 a unit for 12 months. And for the period of time from August 23rd, 2006, which was the date the association started, to 12/31/16, we could have raised a bare minimum, just by following that formula, $1,129,000. So the sponsor didn't put that money away. Why? I'm not going to discuss motivation, but you can all guess why. But the problem is now we have to bring that shortfall back into play. Because when the reserve fund study was, we committed to the reserve fund study, we also have to follow it. So let me back up a second and go back into a couple of things. Bear with me a second. Okay. There's financial statement impact of not having a capital reserve fund, which we just spoke about. There's also the financial institution of not having a capital reserve fund. What do I mean by that? When we go to get financing or refinancing, and we declare that we have a unit here and that's an asset of ours, the banks want to see what you got. And, oh, by the way, all questions will be taken afterwards, so let me finish what we got here. So when I talked to a couple of bankers that I know, they said, Alan, we can't lend to your place. Why? We have no capital reserve fund. But what happens is all these major banks, which lay off their paper with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, have to follow the guidelines. The guidelines were changed after the collapse on January 1st of 2012. You have to have a reserve fund equal to at least 10% of your annual revenue. And you have to have, and then that will qualify you. But the AICPA, which is the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, also got involved. And they said, if you don't meet the criteria that we have established for you, you have to put a statement into your financial statements that says, hey, you haven't got a reserve fund, you're not funding the reserve fund properly, and you have to disclose that fact. So when the financial institutions get our financial statements, more than that, they fail to give us they'll fail to give you a mortgage. Now that's different than a savings loan. They have a different set of rules. They will give it to you because they maintain their paper. So if you have sufficient assets, you will be able to get refinancing. Well, that has changed because we now have entry into the banks because we do have a proper reserve fund. But we have to maintain and we have to follow what the guidelines that are laid out. Now, I'm not going to give you a copy of the reserve fund tonight, but what it will be a complete explanation in the financial statements that the auditors are going to provide, showing you what the various categories are that we have to improve. But basically, in a nutshell, we have to work on our capital assets, our roadways, our driveways, our air conditioning units, any problems with the buildings. And that's what we're putting money away for. Okay. They want the next slide up there? The one, no, that's not my building. No, the other chart. Okay. So we have the engineer has provided us with a 30-year plan. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be here in 30 years. I don't know how many of us will be. So what I did was I divided it into 5-year increments. I'm only going to deal with the first 15 years because they're the only ones that are pertinent. As anybody who knows about projections know, the further you go out, the less reliable they are. So we're only going to take the first 5 years. As you can see, what I've done up here is the engineer gave us 3 columns of what we could put away, and we'd all reach at least a competent amount in the reserve fund that anybody looking at it can give it, saying, hey, you're in compliance with what the reserve fund calls for. These statements are clean. All those fancy paragraphs disappear, and we have what we call a clean opinion. So the first one is if we took over the 30 years to make up what they project our expenditures will be, it will cost us $90 a month. The second one is factored a little bit of with a 3% factor, and that would work out to be $72 a month in the first year, and it keeps on going up a couple of bucks a month. The third one is $67 a month on the first year, and then also going up. So the Budget Committee had decided to go with option number 3, or as Monty Hall would say, door number 3. So we have included that in the budget, but I'll talk about the budget later on. We feel that this is sufficient, but we also have decided that every 5 years we're going to have to do another reserve fund study. So we don't know what that impact is going to be. In addition, somebody mentioned transition before. We are currently going through transition. Now, there is a probability, no, there is a possibility, but not a probability, that we will be receiving a cash award during at the end of transition to make up for all the items that we felt the sponsor should have done, that he didn't do, or that we did and we thought the sponsor should have done. That's all in the process of negotiation right now. But if we get that sum of money, it will go into the Capital Reserve Fund, which will directly impact the contributions that have to be made. So there can be some adjustments to this as we go along. After the first 5 years are over, it will be reviewed, and then a new table will be established so that we try to keep it as low as possible in achieving the aims that we have to do. Now, we all know what could happen. Prices could go up. Other things might happen. We have to be prepared as best we can. But as long as we follow the guidelines that were laid out for us by the engineers, we're in compliance. And that's what we have to be in order to protect us on a financial basis. Okay. The impact of the Capital Reserve Fund contribution on the budget. Everybody's waiting to hear what this is. Okay, well, we have completed the budget. We gave the budget to the board. The board has approved the budget. You'll be receiving copies of it next week. What we did is we took the $67, of which $20 has already been built into our budget, and said we had to add another $67, and we did. What that results in, that we make a contribution this year of $580,000 into the budget, into the fund. But you're not going to be paying $47 more. What we're able to do is we reviewed the budget, and the engineer provided us with certain guidelines of how long he expects things to last. We, in our annual budgeting before this, had certain maintenance schedules that we had. We found that we could extend those periods, so that will be able to be a positive sign for this year's budget going forward. This year, our average unit will go up somewhere between $35, $40 a month, and that will result in approximately a 5% increase, 5% to 6%. Will that happen next year? The answer to that is no. The only next year we'll do the budget, and there'll probably be a small incremental increase. I don't expect it to be major, but we'll deal with that when the time comes. So all in all, I think that we have done the best job we could under the circumstances, and we feel that this is the right thing to do. It's the right way to proceed. If we don't do this, if we didn't adopt the reserve fund, we will be looking at major assessments in 5, 6 years from now, because we would have to do major repairs. Basically, that concludes the basic of my presentation. Now, Anybody has a question, what we'll ask you to do is come over to the side, stand up, we'll call you one by one to just give us your name, ask your question, and I'll try to answer them. Oh, wait a second. You know, I made a big mistake. Stay there, Mike. Stay there, stay there. This is Mike Lester. Mike Lester and I, stand up so everybody can see you. Come on, you should be proud of yourself. Mike Lester and I were on the original budget committee when the sponsor still controlled the board. How successful were we at trying to get a reserve fund established? Didn't work, did it? Right. All right, Mike, you're up. Okay.
I have a couple of questions. My first one.
Ask one at a time, and then.
Yeah. Okay. My first one involves the working capital fund.
Yes.
I looked through the bylaws and the CNRs to see what was said about the working capital fund, and I couldn't find anything. However, at the front of the offering plan, in Condo 2, on page 90, it says that while the sponsor is in control, the working capital fund will not be used to reduce the maintenance charges. But I didn't see anything else. Where did you get your information that the working capital fund has to remain intact and it can only be used if we ran into a deficit?
Yeah, that's what the board had decided. We also continued.
Excuse me, I didn't understand that.
We also continued to get contributions after all the units were sold out. When units turn over, we also get 2 months of contribution.
Yeah, but I don't see any place in our documents that says that we need to maintain a working capital fund now.
I'm not arguing with you, but I'm thinking I haven't seen anything that says we cannot do it or that we have to do it.
Okay, so my point is, with over $700,000 in the working capital fund now, and it's growing as there are turnover, why do we need so much? Why can't you put most of that money into the reserve fund?
The board can discuss that. I don't have any problem with that. But the working capital fund, we don't know, the reason it's been held in reserve and not been touched, we didn't even use it when we set up the original, on January 1st, 17, we moved $530,000 from the operating surplus into the reserve fund. We did not touch the working capital fund. Yeah, so
as far as I'm concerned, we can give the reserve fund a significant shot in the arm and possibly reduce our monthly contribution to the reserve fund if you transferred a good part of the working capital fund into the reserve fund.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but okay, no, it's a fair point.
My next question.
Wait, no. Does anybody else like a question? Because we can come back to him later. Or is he the only one who's going to ask questions tonight? Come on around, come on, Dick. Then you come back after, then you can ask a second question.
All right, my next question involves the operating account with $1.3 million in cash in it. The last information I have was from our last bill. We had receipts in the month of March of $454,000. So we have over 3 months worth of cash receipts sitting in our operating account. Tell me, how many people have 3 months worth of income sitting in your personal checking accounts?
I think we need a reserve fund of an operating reserve of 6 months. That's what we've been operating.
We need over 3 months worth of income in our operating account.
No,
Nobody needs that kind of cash. And I think a good part of having 2 months worth of cash receipts sitting in operating is more than enough, which would
Well,
be
the board does
free
not
up
agree-
over
the board does not agree with
400,000
that
more to go into the reserve account.
Okay.
But
You're entitled
My
to your
opinion.
opinion.
I understand about the reserve fund, but are you making any kind of an allowance somewhere for capital improvements, which will have to be done, that are not really maintenance and repairs?
The reserve fund does include that. That's absolutely
It's
correct.
included
It's
in-
included in the reserve, what the engineer did. Absolutely. Dick Grossman. Anybody else? Yes, please, come on up. Yeah. Just say your name so we know who you are.
Len Reich.
Yes.
I'm too short. I have two questions.
Sure.
The first one, is there a definition with regard to the use of the money in the reserve fund? Is it limited to certain specific needs and activities?
Yes, it's limited to capital improvements. You cannot use that for operating funds. That's why we have a working capital fund reserve.
The definition of capital improvements
Right.
are repairs, and let's say
No,
somebody's...
not repairs go into the operating budget.
Give me an example of a capital improvement.
We have to change the roads.
Well, that's a repair, isn't it? It's not a
No,
improvement.
if we have to redo the roads, that's a capital improvement.
Okay.
If we have to change the air conditioning systems on the roofs, that's a capital improvement.
Okay. Let's say we wanted to expand the cafe.
If we wanted to expand the kitchen area, for argument's sake, that would be a major improvement.
Okay. Second question. There are other ways to raise money. Have they been considered? Such as, there are transfer fees. When you sell an apartment, you can attach a fee to the sale. So that, let's say the fee is 10%, 5%, 2% of the sale, and the new party pays for that fee. That's a quick and sure
Well,
way.
we take 2 months of the maintenance fees as from each new tenant, each new owner.
I belong to a community where there's a transfer fee of $16,000.
God bless you.
And we have a few $1 million.
No, I understand.
It doesn't have to
I
be
understand.
16,000, but it can be a certain portion of the sale, which in a sense transfers the burden to the people coming into the community who will be here a lot longer than we will be. So it's not a bad way to think of raising money.
All right. We are actually paying it forward. There's no question about that. It's something we have to do. We have to protect our investments. And that's why we're taking the action that we're taking. We relied upon the engineers who are well-renowned. We're following their suggestions. And all that will show up in the financial statements. We'll see what you have, which will be very clean. And I understand Mike wants us to move the money around, but I'm not all in favor of that. I'm a little bit more conservative than he is. Taller, but a little more conservative. Anybody else? Sure, come on. Get Lori too.
I'm also short.
Yeah, I see that. Tell us your name, please.
Rich Stein.
Okay.
Okay. Just a question. Having read the board minutes, in the board minutes there was a statement that we are going to make a capital improvement on building 22. We're going
Yes.
to replace a roof.
That is correct.
Now, I don't know exactly how old that building is, but I think it's about 12, maybe 13 years old.
I don't know if it's that old. That was the old sales office.
That was the
building.
old sales office. That was the model building, in fact.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's why it
so
needs a new roof. That's
it's-
another story.
Okay. Having said that, that's an installation. First of all, the roof itself, these roofs should be 25-year roofs.
We have 20 and 25-year warranties.
Okay. So we're replacing it early, regardless of the age of the building.
Well, just, can I stop right there?
Yep.
We do not have a warranty on that building.
He smiles and says, what?
Because the sponsor did not put a real roof on that building. He put a temporary roof and never
Okay.
changed it out.
Which
So,
leads
can-
into
wait,
my
wait,
next
wait.
question, Al.
I'm going to give you the answer before you ask it. Oh, okay. You hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? We have that as part of our transition.
That was
The
exactly my
sponsor,
question.
the sponsor has agreed to pay.
Okay, so
But he
whatever,
hasn't agreed on everything, but that, he understands it's
okay, whatever portion he decides to pay for, hopefully 100% of the roof, I say
probably
hopefully, it's
not.
part of
We probably will
negotiations,
have to split it with him.
that will find its way back into the
Absolutely.
reserve fund. Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, now we're starting to warm up. Mike again.
You can't get rid of me so fast.
Ah, come on, Mike, we go back a long way.
My question regarding the reserve fund. We're talking about one fund, one number, yet we have an HOA, we have 7 condos. The 7 condos have Class A properties, which are the villas and townhouses, and Class B properties, which are the condo suite buildings. Each one of these 3 different entities, the HOA, Class A, Class B, have different needs regarding capital improvements. Has there been any thought about segregating the reserve fund into these 3 components?
The answer to that question is no, because all the maintenance and everything else from those 7 condominiums is seated over to the HOA. So the HOA is controlling everything.
But it comes out of a different budget. So why isn't there a different reserve fund?
Because the reserve funds, the condos themselves do not have reserve funds. Because any improvements that are going to be done there are going to be paid for by the HOA.
Okay.
Well, that's okay. So far we're 4 for 4. We haven't agreed on anything.
Marvin Fields, 2
Yes.
simple questions. What is the projected increase? What is the projected increase in the monthly charges right now, and how much is the projected increase of the reserve fund? It's the 22nd of the month, the end of the month is coming up. You gotta have some numbers. Give us just a projected numbers.
I told you that already.
What? I wasn't here.
Oh. The average monthly increase is going to be between $38 and $39 in each
How much?
unit. $38 and $39
38, 39.
per month, yes. And we're putting $67 per month into the reserve
And
fund.
that'll cover both items?
Yes.
Okay.
I think you're going to have to lower the mic, Linda.
I don't see anywhere on here where it says what the reserve fund is supposed to, what the engineers said the amounts are. Are we going to get any breakdown?
Yes, you will.
Like, we
Yeah,
should
you will get
budget certain amount?
you will get a complete sheet that shows you what the estimated lives of the individual items are
Okay.
and when they are supposed to be replaced.
Will we get that in like September?
Yeah,
October?
we'll get that. We'll send out a mailing to that. It'll probably either be in this month or next month.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right. All right, we're done. Thank you all for coming. If anybody else has a question, then they can come up.
Just remember,
We have 2 board members for you to speak to, and next month we're having an open board meeting in this
They'll be
room.
in the monthly mailing.
It's June 12th, I think.